Making a horrible game got me where I am. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I've learned so much since making my first game. I started making games about a year and a half ago. I never intended for myself to have gotten this deep into game development, but I'm glad I've stuck around. I originally started this journey because I was curious about what I could do. I always wanted to be in some process of making games, but I knew I was not much of a programmer at heart. So I got into art school and I decided to become a game artist. And in the meantime, I decided to work on this game to give me some practice. But one of the first things this game taught me is that programming is not as challenging as I thought it would be. Another thing it taught me is that games need a lot of art. I always knew games need a lot of artists. I play them a lot and I see all the art around me. I just never understood the sheer amount it needed until I started doing this. But the most important thing making this game taught me is that it's okay to make something bad. I wanted to make this video as a way to look back on how far I've gotten since I started this journey, and hopefully encourage people that may be feeling like their game projects aren't up to a certain standard. Game development is not easy. It is a lot of work and learning, but as with any skill, it only gets better with more time you put into it. One of the things that kept me from pursuing game development before was this idea that coding and programming is something impossible, that it is a skill that can only be taught in special classes and for those with dedication to it. Now, I probably wouldn't have said that back then, but I certainly felt that way in the past. I probably would have said programming is just not for me, or that it is something I don't have patience for. But in reality, it looked like a steep mountain that I was not prepared to climb, and so I set out to climb it. For years I've been learning new things through YouTube tutorials, such as miniature painting, Blender, writing, and even a lot of the techniques that I use for art. And of course, there are a lot of tutorials out there for making games. I've watched devlogs before and people making games within a day and all these awesome things, and so at one point I thought I should just try it out. I found a tutorial from Heartbeast for making a platformer in Godot and decided to try following along. I watched other tutorials from other people to make certain mechanics, and eventually I started to get the hang of how things work. The hardest part for me was to think in the way that the computer might think and to try to come up with solutions to issues that I didn't even think about. But it was a lot of fun. Finding an unintended bug and finding a solution that worked was the most satisfying thing I've ever done. It felt almost like defeating a hard boss that you were stuck on for hours. The only difference was that it was something that I made, and that I learned a solution for the next time that I would encounter this problem. And I was making a game, something that I can play and show my friends and family. Looking back, my code for the game was an absolute mess. It was really inefficient, and I came up with so many compromises in order to make things work. If I were to ever go back to this project, I would have to start from scratch. However, I learned a lot from my solutions, and I even use a lot of them in the Umbra. I went into game development to practice my art in a way to eventually build a portfolio. That is what I would have said as the practical answer to why I'm doing this. But in actuality, I wanted to make something new and interesting. I realized that if I wanted to make art for games, then it would only make sense to work on making games. I didn't really know what I needed to make in order to develop a game, all the different assets and types of elements that goes into the art of video games. Working on a project myself gave me perspective on what it takes, and gave me the opportunity to practice and get better. There are many skills I still need to master, but the most important step has already been taken. The most important step is always the next one. That is a quote from one of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson. It is something that I believe is very important in life. If there is something you want to pursue, then the best thing to do is to just go for it. For me, I've always wanted to try things like making video games or starting YouTube and to show my art more seriously. But I've always felt like it was something that I would do later, when I have more skill and understanding. However, the most important hurdle is to just try it out, to make something manageable and fun. Once you have done that, then a world of possibilities opens up. Some good advice you will always hear is to make bad games before making your dream project. But I am the type of person who inflates their ideas and things become way too ambitious. It can be a real problem, but it not being my dream project has really saved me. This game was going to be bigger, with multiple levels and characters. I wanted branching paths and different endings, but this was just practice. I didn't want it to be a long project. And so at some point where I felt that I liked where it was, I stopped it and worked on something else. There's so much to learn and do, so it's important to limit yourself before things become so unmanageable that it becomes overwhelming. I think I found a good stopping point that I liked, and so I brought my project up to that point and stopped it. However, if you are working on a project, it is also not good to just quit in the middle of it. Game dev is a balance between making something interesting and fun to being doable and possible. You always want to push yourself, but know your own limits. If you made it this far, then I thank you. This might be a bit different of a video to my usual devlogs, but I felt like sharing my thoughts. I'll be making a new devlog soon, so keep an eye for that. Until next time, bye bye.